Ohio is home to one of the best roller coaster collections in the United States, not because of its quantity like California and Florida, but because of its sheer quality in their two main theme parks, Cedar Point and Kings Island. In this video, I will be ranking the top 10 coasters in Ohio, and along the way, we'll be giving you my thoughts and opinions on these amazing machines. Before we begin the video, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. I post weekly roller coaster content and I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers within the next month or so subscribing would really help me out. Plus, it's free and you can always change your mind at any point in the video. Before we get into the top 10, I would like to give an honorable mention to Orion at Kings Island, which is a B&M Giga Coaster, and I thought this ride was pretty great, including the first drop, but after that, the reverse treble clef is just a waste of energy, and the second half is pretty lackluster for a Giga Coaster, although I do think it is still a good ride and holds a good place in Kings Island's lineup. Now, let's kick off the top 10 with Banshee. This B&M inverted coaster at Kings Island falls in the lower tier of inverted coasters that I've ridden. However, it still packs a good punch with that amazing first drop, which absolutely whips you over in the back row, and very nice inversions, which aren't completely forceful, but they're just graceful, and that's what I like about this ride. Also, a lot of people complain about this ride being rough, but I really didn't notice it, and I don't really mind a B&M rattle anyways. Banshee does have one of the best finales on any invert, with that amazing pretzel knot thing, and then a vertical loop into a very nice hang time filled roll, into a helix, which leads you into the brake run. Overall, this is a really fun B&M invert coaster. Coming in at number 9 on the list, we have yet another B&M inverted coaster, and this one is Raptor at Cedar Point. And this ride is just plain forceful. It's classic old school B&M from the 1990s, and you can feel every bit of it on this ride. The drop is pretty good, although I do think it's quite overrated, but the inversions after are very forceful, and they really give a good whip. Although the first half has some cookie cutter elements, the second half is quite unique, with those amazing helixes that give the feeling that your feet are about to get chopped off. Overall, this is a really fun and intense ride, and it takes the cake for me as the best B&M invert in Ohio. Number 8, the Beast at Kings Island. This is a monster wooden coaster, and while I didn't ride it before the retrack, I did ride it a few weeks ago after the retrack and thought it was amazing. The drop was really good in the back row, and while the middle of the ride was pretty disappointing because there really wasn't much elements, I did think it was really cool being secluded from the rest of the park in the middle of the forest. The second lift hill and the portion after that is my favorite part of the ride, with that intense double helix that is now really smooth after the retrack. Combine that all together and you have a great classic wooden coaster. Moving over to Cedar Point again. My number 7 coaster in Ohio is Millennium Force, which is an Intamin Giga Coaster, and this ride is really fun because of its great sense of speed in the front row. The back does give a lot of airtime on the drop and some of the speed hills, but I just prefer the front, and I bet everyone else basically does too. All those turns might not be the best, but just take them in the front row with a bunch of wind in your face just amplifies the ride experience too. And while I haven't got a night ride on this coaster yet, I heard they're amazing on this ride. So when I get out to Cedar Point later this summer, I have to try that. Millennium Force may be a large contrast from Intimidator 305 at Kings Dominion in Virginia, but I really like it still because of its fun ride experience. Staying at Cedar Point for yet another Intamin, number 6 is Top Thrill Dragster, an Intamin accelerator coaster. In this ride, I would like to call short but sweet. I mean, it's really short, like 17 seconds long. But that launch is absolutely incredible. You get a massive gut punch, and you feel like you cannot breathe for multiple seconds. And then the top hat is pretty good. It gives you incredible views of Lake Erie, and the drop is overshadowed by that 270-degree roll, but it's still really fun. Although, I do wish there would be more elements on this ride. I get what they had to work with for this ride, and I absolutely love it for what it is. Number 5, Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. I absolutely love this ride. I used to have it as my favorite hyper coaster, but now it's not even my favorite hyper in Ohio. But this ride is amazing. A lot of people complain about this ride being rough and uncomfortable and janky. And while it is that, I feel like the positives well outweigh the negatives on this ride, with that incredible finale airtime moments, which is pretty good in the magic seat, but make sure to ride in the back row. That is where you get absolutely ejected out of your seat. Other than that, this ride's setting is really good, going along the beach for half the ride, and then going over the Cedar Point Shores Water Park for half the ride too. Heck, you can even see Canada from the lift hill. And no, that isn't a joke. Overall, this is a classic hypercoaster that deserves to stay for many decades to come. Moving over to Kings Island for my favorite hyper in Ohio, we have Diamondback, a B&M hypercoaster, and this ride is amazing. It originally blew me away on my first ride, and I had it above Mako in my rankings. Yes, you heard me right. I had it above Mako, an incredible B&M hyper. And yes, this ride is still incredible, but I don't have it that high anymore. Although this ride is still really fun. The airtime is very sustained compared to a ride like Intimidator, and there aren't many trims, and the ones that there are very weak, so they don't really do anything to the ride. And the second half might be a little lackluster, but you still have that really cool splashdown finale, which I absolutely love to see on rides. And when you put your hand back in the back row, you get absolutely soaked. Trust me, don't do that when it's 50 degrees out and you're doing night rides, because I did that and that was a big mistake. But anyways, Diamondback is absolutely a great ride, and definitely one of my favorite coasters at Kings Island. Staying in the Rivertown section of Kings Island, we have my number 1 coaster at Kings Island and my number 3 coaster in Ohio, which is Mystic Timbers, a GCI wooden coaster, and this ride gives incredible Flowjector airtime, mixed in with a ton of laterals. This ride truly shows that you do not have to be big to be the best coaster in a park, and this ride does not disappoint by any means. The Twisted First Drop may not be the best, but it still is fun and it gives you a good whip in the back row. But what comes next is a bunch of airtime hills, which gives solid Flowjector airtime and mostly laterals too, which I was not expecting really. The turnaround may not be a lot, but there is a tunnel, and basically that's the rest of the ride. Just Flowjector airtime hills, and then there's the shed, which is, well, the shed. One thing I recommend is to totally get a night ride on this coaster. It is absolutely amazing. It's like the Beast Night Ride, but a bit more scaled down. Because you're in that secluded setting, and you really do not see any of those airtime moments or lateral filled turns coming at all. Moving back over to Cedar Point, we have my number 2 coaster in Ohio, which is Maverick, an Intamin Blitz coaster, and this ride is an absolute jack of all trades. The first drop is super whippy and intense in the back row, and the transitions that follow are also very snappy in almost any row. The camelback is absolutely amazing, giving sustained ejector airtime to the entire train. And then the twisted horseshoe rolls are okay, and they could be better, but hey, I'll take inversions rather than, let's say, more transitions, to at least give some variety to the ride. After that, you go into a tunnel under the station into an absolutely insane launch that gets you up to 70 miles an hour. And this launch is super powerful, as I've mentioned already. It absolutely shoots you out of that tunnel, and just being in that tunnel originally just gives you an extra sense of speed. After that, you hit a set of trims while going up, but then you go over a fountains, which may or may not give effects based on when you're at Cedar Point, and into these stangle dives. And oh my gosh, these stangle dives are absolutely incredible. They are so snappy. It's like many Intimidator 305 transitions. Now that I've ranted about this ride in a good way, I'm going to move on to my number 1 coaster in Ohio, which of course is the man, the myth, the legend, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, an RMC hybrid coaster. If you wanted so much airtime on a coaster that you can't comprehend it, then go to Sandusky right now, because this ride is absolutely mental when it comes to the airtime. Sure, most of the airtime moments might not be as good as, let's say, Twisted Timbers triple camelbacks, but they are absolutely sustained, and that's what I really like about this ride's airtime. It may not be the best, but it's sustained. Along with that, you dive through the structure and have 4 inversions, in which some of are very whippy and give you a lot of intensity. I also feel like this ride's setting attributes to how good it is. I mean, if you were to plop this ride down in a field in North Dakota, then sure, it will be really good still, but I feel like the setting just amplifies the ride experience, like Millennium Force. Just seeing the water is really cool when you're on the lift hill, and just going through the elements and just noticing that you're right next to Lake Erie is really cool. And that basically goes for the entire park of Cedar Point. Anyways, that is going to be it for the ranking of the top 10 coasters in Ohio. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like down below, and while you're at it, why not subscribe? I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers within the next month or so, and subscribing would really help me out. Plus, I post weekly content, so it's basically a win-win situation. Anyways, this is Zero G Coaster signing out. As always, have a great rest of your day, and see you guys.